All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman. Before we get rolling today, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts to get updated anytime we post any new NBA content. Right now, we are in the middle of our team previews for the 2021-22 season. We are still in the non-playoff team, so we have lots of content to go over the next month or so, 2 months actually, before the season starts. So going over the New Orleans Pelicans today, which Caveman is very excited about because he loves where the Pelicans are heading. In 2020, they were 31-41 under legendary head coach Stan Van Gundy, who they terminated, and now Willie Green, which was an interesting coaching hire, is going to be the next coach for the Pelicans. Going over some numbers, they were 12th in offensive rating, ninth in points per game, so they were very strong offensively, but they were 22nd defensively, to nobody's surprise, including my own. But they really struggled from the three-point line last year. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams. They were in the top 5 in rebounding, so they have a lot of size, and especially a guy like Lonzo, who is really good at rebound, and Josh Hart rebounding from their positions were very effective. But from the perimeter, just the perimeter overall, they were a terrible three-point shooting team, and they struggled to defend on the perimeter. So looking at some of their season leaders, Zion at 27 points per game, Brandon Ingram at 23.8. Steven Adams led the way in rebounds with 8, and actually tied with Josh Hart, who I mentioned, who also averaged 8 rebounds a game, surprisingly enough. And then Zion Williamson at 7.2. Assists, Lonzo at 5.7, Brandon Ingram at 4.9, and then he's not third. He was actually fourth on the team, but Zion actually averaged almost 4 assists a game, so I thought that was interesting to note. And then Lonzo Ball, 1.5 steals. They didn't have one player, and you rarely see this, average more than 1 block. James Johnson led the way with 0.9 blocks per game. So who stood out to you last season for the Pelicans, Caveman?
I mean, man, I wanted to just let you talk this entire episode because this just made me depressed. And I'm more depressed because I saw my depression coming and I was like, oh great, here we go, and it happened. But aside from that, I mean, I'm not gonna say Zion or Brandon Ingram. I think they both, we gotta talk about somebody other than those. I mean, sure, I think they both improved, but they kind of improved how we expected them to improve, I think. But yeah, you mentioned him a couple times. Josh Hart. I mean, I saw his almost his like 7+ view. Like, okay. I mean, I was like, okay, did I? Like, I didn't think Josh Hart was that long. Oh shit, he's only 6'5", and he's averaging over 7 rebounds a game, and he's not even starting. What's going on here? Yeah, he was a great rebounder for his size, and I believe, and he's long, athletic, gives the Pelicans a lot of versatility. And when you talked about how they weren't that good defensively. Josh Hart was one of the few bright spots on that end of the court for him. Yes, they were able to plug him in a bunch of different lineups and situations. And I believe they extended him. I believe they gave him a contract extension. So they did lock him up. So he's going to be part of their longer term core. I really like his fit with this team for what the team needs. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think Josh Hart is the name that stuck out to me. I'm not gonna say Lonzo because Lonzo's no longer with the team, so that doesn't count. So I go with Josh Hart as the guy that really stood out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to at least talk about Zion and Brandon Ingram. I think this is still an interesting combination, and it's to be determined if they can win together, in my opinion. But I mean, Zion showed huge strides. I mean, I think people forget, and I don't know, he's one of those guys people like to hate for whatever reason because I think the expectations were so big for him. And, he's not really a modern kind of player. I mean, he's athletic, but, he doesn't offer a lot of defensive versatility necessarily because he's not a great defender. But I mean, I was encouraged. That's why I wanted to mention the assists. We haven't really seen Zion as a playmaker, and we saw that a little bit last season, and I thought that was encouraging. But, he took big steps in his second season, made his first All-Star appearance. I don't think he's ever going to be, a three-point specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that he has that kind of energy and leadership that can lead a team. But this is kind of, it's similar to, I'm interested to see if he can become even more of a playmaker, but it reminds me, and I'm not comparing him to LeBron, but the strategy when LeBron was winning championships was to surround him with a bunch of shooters. And that's where the Pelicans have really failed. If you're going to win a team with Zion Williamson at the core, you need not just okay 3-point shooters, you're going to need to surround him with elite 3-point shooting, and they have really failed to do that. I think they tried to rectify that a little bit this offseason, which we'll talk about shortly, but I still don't know if I see it. So I'll be interested to see over the next few, because to me it's simple. I think Zion can be a championship caliber player. You just need to surround him with the right pieces. And you need a primary ball handler who is ideally a strong 3-point shooter and other shooters surrounding him. And I don't think have solved that issue yet, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about, and Brandon Ingram, by the way, has still been really good. I don't think there's much to say. I don't think he necessarily he was actually a little more of a playmaker last season too, which was interesting because they had Lonzo, Ingram, and Zion all making plays for him. But Brandon Ingram had another all-star season, was very good. Didn't necessarily show any improvements, but you got to at least shout him out because he had a good season.
Bare minimum, he just did status quo. He kind of didn't get any worse. He just kind of did what he did.
I think we kind of know what he is at this point, especially. I mean, he's only 23, but after last season, he feels like the kind of guy. I mean, he averaged the exact same number of points the last two seasons, 23.8 exactly. It feels to me that we kind of know what Brandon Ingram is now, which is a star player. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's made back-to-back All-Star games, I believe, now. So he is a star-level player. Is he going to become a superstar? Probably not, but I think he at least is a very nice secondary scorer on a.
I mean, I don't think so either, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility because he's already an all-star and he's only 23.
Yeah, so it's possible.
Is it out of the realm of possibility? No, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if superstar is in him.
Yep, definitely. So let's go over what they've done this offseason. They've had a semi-busy offseason, I would say, especially in the trade market. Through the draft, they only acquired 2 players. I mentioned they needed some 3-point shooting, and they got one of the better ones in Trey Murphy at 17 overall. And then Herb Jones, 35th overall, adding some pieces to the front court there. Their additions so far, Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham, Garrett Temple, Tomas Satoransky from the Bulls, and then they've lost Lonzo, Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, and James Johnson. So there's been quite a bit of movement. But I'm going to say something, and let me know if you think I'm crazy. I feel like a lot of the moves that they made were lateral moves. So what I mean by that is, did they actually get better from these moves? I question it a little bit because Lonzo and Devontae Graham, I mean, I'd still rather have Lonzo, but maybe at this point they're similar at least.
I mean, yeah.
They're similar at least. I mean, I don't think they're that.
I think Devontae Graham, which is why I think Devontae Graham has a little bit more offensive upside from a shooting.
That 3-point shooting that they're looking for.
So that part makes sense. That's what they were going after. So that. Yeah, I think that is a bit more lateral, but it might slightly favor them in what they need.
But just even overall, so I mean, looking at Eric Bledsoe and James Johnson, they lost for Garrett Temple and Satoransky. Arguably, you could say they lost a little bit there. Valanciunas is better than Steven Adams, but by how much? I don't know. If they improved, maybe it's just by a very slight margin. So to me, I think it's interesting. A lot of movement here, but
Jonas can pop an occasional 3.
A little bit, yeah. He gives them a little bit there, but I don't know. I just feel like for the most part, it doesn't feel like did they improve maybe a little bit and they added a little bit of shooting and Valanciunas is definitely better than Steven Adams. That would be the big improvement, but
You are
I
just a
just
hater. No, I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think Valanciunas is better, but let the record reflect that you are not a fan of Steven Adams.
see, I always find any opportunity I can to
You,
bash.
you
That's because nobody has
hate
made more
Steven
money for doing less than that guy.
Adams. You are not a fan of Steven Adams. Let the record
I'm
reflect.
just mad that he was making $22 million a year. That's ridiculous.
All right. Yeah, you mentioned their. I mean, the Trey Murphy pick, great pickup, gives them exactly what they need. That was kind of the big thing they did to really if you want to say they improved this offseason, it's because they went out and got a guy like Trey Murphy. Everything else was either lateral, maybe a slight improvement. Like I do think Devontae Graham is a slight upgrade over Alonzo based on what the team needed. Because you saw maybe they don't need Lonzo's playmaking as much because like guys like Brandon Ingram and Zion are starting to show improvements in the playmaking area, so maybe they didn't need that as much. So that's why they went out and got Devontae Graham, who can't really play make. I think if Devontae Graham was a bit better playmaker, he'd still be in Charlotte. But but yeah, I like the move. I like the moves overall, but as we'll get into when we get into the depth chart, I don't think it really moves the needle much for them. I think they're just kind of they're just kind of they did what they did to not get worse. That's how I look at it, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and that's what I think it's disappointing. And I know it's not like Zion's window of winning is closing or anything crazy like that, but they have an opportunity to build a winning, legitimate championship contender. And it feels like they're just, I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Zion is not happy.
Yeah.
And there's that aspect of it too. Now, if there are serious rumblings, if like I can't imagine a situation where they trade Zion. That's just stupid. It would make 0 sense, and they'd be one of the worst teams for eternity. But yeah, that's also that's a big gray cloud hanging over this team. Is they get whatever's going on behind the scenes. I think there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I think it's more than on court stuff. For whatever reason, Zion is not happy right now. So we'll have to. They're gonna have to address that as the season goes on to make sure that Zion's not happy, and he's the face of the franchise, honestly. And that trickles down into the rest of the team. It's a very slippery slope, and we're looking at, and that's gonna cause some real problems.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always been the rumblings he wants to play in New York or one of those bigger markets. And the more that they are losing and the closer we get to him having to make an extension decision, I mean, the louder that noise is going to get. And, I don't know if they're putting themselves in a position to where he's going to want to stay around. I mean, I think he is a winning guy, and as positive as he is, he wants to win. And if they're not making moves to do that, yeah, I think that's a very valid point to bring up. So, let's look at their depth chart, which we've made some references to. It's kind of, I don't know, their depth chart is intriguing to me because there's so many question marks. So it's not intriguing necessarily in a good way, but in that backcourt, we mentioned Devontae Graham. They have Nickeil Alexander-Walker listed as the other starter right now. They have Kira Lewis, who we were all questioning.
I sure hope he gets more playing time now.
Yeah, he barely played last year, but that was a very odd selection in last year's draft. Went much higher than other people were expecting, but he's coming off the bench.
Our 7-minute episode on him.
Yeah, that's it. We hated Kira Lewis. He's just fast. That's it. Tomas Sadorinsky, Garrett Temple. So behind Graham and Alexander Walker, you have Lewis, Temple, and Sadorinsky. I just think it's interesting because Lewis and Alexander Walker, really haven't played much in their careers thus far, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of minutes and a lot of they're going to have to rely on them a little bit in that second unit. You know, we keep talking about who's leading that second unit. In this case, I guess Kira Lewis, and there's a lot of pressure on him. He's a young guy. We haven't seen much from him, so.
But that's why maybe this was when they took him 9th overall last year. Now now this is going to be his opportunity to show why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he definitely has an opportunity, and he's one I'm just interested. I think that's why I'm intrigued by it, because if you're going to say, how's this backcourt going to look this year? No idea, because it's hard to set expectations for Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kira Lewis because they're so inexperienced at this point. So at the 3, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart behind him. At the 4, we have Zion, and at the 5, Valanciunas. Behind them, you have Jackson Hayes, Hernan Gomez, and Najee Marshall. Little concerning there. Zion, some people have been concerned about him being injury prone. I'm not concerned, but I don't know. There's not a lot of depth in the front court. A lot of question marks in the front court. I don't like it, honestly. I don't think their depth is great. I think there's question marks in their starting lineup, who's leading the second unit. And when you're in the Western Conference, it's just not going to cut it, honestly.
Yeah. I don't mind their depth at the 5. You got Valanciunas, you got Jackson Hayes, and you got Hernan Gomez. I think the 5 is set because you're never gonna have Zion at the 5. Honestly, that's not gonna work. But I am concerned about the depth behind Zion because what happens if Zion is forced to miss a chunk of time, or I think Zion's one of those guys. Or I'm not a fan of it, but you might want to consider a little bit of load management with him. He's one of those guys, and with this team and how they're constructed, you really can't. You need Zion out there when you look at this team. And that might be part of Zion's problem. And you're going to see a guy like Herbert Jones, who they got in the second round. I think he's going to play a bigger role than a lot of people are anticipating. Because I think if you're looking at this team, at the 4 behind Zion, you're looking at Najee Marshall and Herbert Jones going to get some looks there as well. So that's kind of that. If Najee Marshall and Herbert Jones are your key depth pieces behind Zion, that's not good.
Yeah.
But other than the depth behind Zion, I don't mind the depth in the backcourt because at least I can see what they're going for, and what they're trying to do. I see the direction they want to go with their backcourt. Obviously, they signed Graham. Graham's obviously gonna be in that starting backcourt. And then I really think that I really think they're gonna try to get an extended look at Kira Lewis this year. And then Thomas Satoransky is just a good, solid depth piece. They also need to see what they have in Alexander Walker too. So I see where they're going as far as the backcourt. I see what they're trying to do. Don't know if it's gonna work. I don't think it's gonna work. But at least I see where they're going, and I see the point. But yeah, other than that, Brandon Ingram, Zion, Staples in the lineup, they're going to do what they're going to do. Valanciunas is going to do what he's going to do. So I see the point for the most part. But I just don't think it's going to lead them anywhere, if we're being honest.
Yeah. And that's the problem. I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit in general. There's a lot of parity in the NBA right now. There's a lot of strong teams. You can make the case for a lot of teams making the playoffs, maybe besides, we'll say 4 or 5 in the league that we completely just don't expect to make a run at the playoffs. You have to be more set than what the Pelicans are at this point to make a run. And you kind of mentioned, I mean, I didn't mention Trey Murphy in the depth chart either. I mean, he's going to obviously get some playing time. I don't know how extensive his playing time will be behind Ingram, Josh Hart. We'll see if he plays in the backcourt. You'll see him at some point, but I just there's too many question marks for me, and I think you hit on a lot of the points, so I won't repeat them. But still a young team, a lot of question marks. If Kira Lewis comes out and surprises, and all of a sudden, we say, oh man, this is a guy that can be an all-star caliber player. I think that's kind of what they're hoping and relying on, is a guy like Alexander Walker or Kira Lewis taking that step and becoming an all-star.
That's the thing with this team, is that Brandon Ingram, even if Brandon Ingram improves to being almost a superstar level player, and Zion, if Zion keeps, I don't think that's really enough to do much. I don't think Zion improving and Brandon Ingram improving does anything for him, or at least does much to improve their odds of, making a run. So it's really going to depend on guys like this backcourt. It's really going to depend on this backcourt coming through, is what it comes down to. Which is why I understand where they're going. I'm not huge into any of these guys, so we'll just have this. Well, they're basically asking a lot out of this backcourt, is what it comes down to. And I don't know if any of these guys are ready to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, and we haven't even really said, this is a league that's driven by guard play. And when your biggest question mark arguably is your guard play, that's concerning. That's what it is at the end of the day. So I can't see. Are you still going to say, though, I'm done with the Pelicans, but I need to ask, are they still going to be a top 4 seed or no?
Man.
That says it all. I just want to end it on that face and screenshot it and put it everywhere. I'll make a meme out of it when you think the Pelicans are going to be a top 4 seed. That's the look.
Yeah.
Not to mention, they have a rookie head coach with all of this, too, with all these question marks.
That certainly doesn't. And that I think that head coaching hire only adds fuel to the fire with Zion. I don't think Zion was thrilled with the hire. But, going on where they're going to finish next season. Would it shock me to say they won't improve and, sneak into a possible playoff berth? It wouldn't shock me. Because when you have two all-star, borderline superstar talents in Brandon Ingram and Zion, you're going to have a chance to be in a lot of games. You're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. I think that can be said. I'm just not a believer in everybody outside of Zion and Brandon Ingram to really do enough to really make them competitive. I think that's what it comes down to. So they're not going to be the worst team in the Western Conference by any stretch. I think they're 11 to 13 kind of team. I really think they're basically going to be. They're not going to improve at all. They're not really going to. They're going to basically be what they were last year. They're going to be around the same winning percentage. They're probably going to be 11-12, but that's kind of where they're at for me.
Yeah, I think I'd have them at 12 this year, so that's personally where I'd put them. But yeah, I agree with you, and I think we've kind of talked about why that is. So, like I said, I think it'll be intriguing, if anything, to just monitor where the Zion situation goes in the future. Because, he was not vocal, but there was a lot of rumors floating around about Teresa Witherspoon, I believe is her name, that he really wanted them to hire, and they didn't end up doing that. She's a close confidant of Zion, and she's a part of the coaching staff right now. So, I'd assume that they talked to Zion into hiring Willie Green, but assuming is never a good idea. So it almost feels like the Trailblazers and Dame, where they're just doing anything they can.
That's what went through my mind.
And I feel like I feel like he's legitimately the kind of guy that is loyal, and I think he would truly stay with the Pelicans if he feels like they're committed to winning. But to me, it doesn't feel like they're committed to winning right now. And I don't think Zion will be afraid to walk away. But I don't think he wants to. But, it's similar to Giannis, where if the Bucks didn't put pieces around Giannis, I think Giannis would have walked because he wants to win.
The Bucks showed that they wanted to surround Giannis, and they did everything they could. And I think it proved to Giannis that they're committed to winning. So.
And that's what the Pelicans are going to have to do. And they're going to have to do it fast. Maybe not. They didn't do it this season, but next offseason is going to have to be a big offseason for them. Otherwise, we may be talking about Zion and what his next destination is at this point. So I think that's it. Anything else you want to say about the Pelicans?
Nope, I think I'm done being depressed for today now.
Okay, good. I'm glad that we could end on depression for a recording session. That's always positive. So make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're only through, I believe 9 episodes now, something like that. So we have tons more content coming out. Make sure you subscribe, keep an eye out, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep. All right. Did he pick yet?